This story is titled, My Twin Sister's Husband Asked Me to Pretend to Be Her at a Family Event While She Was Sick. What I discovered that night made me change my phone number. Have you ever had that moment when a single phone call completely shatters your understanding of someone you thought you knew your entire life? That's what happened to me last month. Now I'm sitting here, staring at my new phone with a number that only 5 people in the world know, trying to process how my twin sister's seemingly perfect marriage turned out to be built on years of carefully crafted lies. I'm Jessica, 28F, and up until recently, I thought I had a pretty good grasp on my life and family dynamics. My identical twin sister Jennifer, 28F, and I were always close, finishing each other's sentences, sharing clothes, and being there for each other through every major life event. When she married Marcus, 32M, 3 years ago, I was her maid of honor. He seemed like the perfect catch. Successful real estate developer, charming personality, and completely devoted to my sister. At least, that's what everyone thought. Our parents, Richard, 58M, and Andrea, 56F, absolutely adored Marcus. He was everything they wanted in a son-in-law: respectful, ambitious, and seemingly genuine in his love for Jennifer. They even helped the couple with a down payment on their dream house in the suburbs, convinced they were investing in their daughter's happiness. Looking back now, I should have noticed the subtle changes in Jennifer's behavior over the past year. The canceled lunch dates, the vague explanations about why she couldn't attend family gatherings, and those moments when she would zone out during our conversations, her mind clearly somewhere else. But I chalked it up to the stress of her new promotion at the architectural firm where she worked. That Friday evening, when Marcus called me with what seemed like an innocent request, I had no idea I was about to uncover something that would tear our family apart. His voice was slightly shaky as he explained that Jennifer had come down with a severe migraine and couldn't attend her father's retirement party the next day. He asked if I could step in and pretend to be her, just for a few hours. It would break Richard's heart if Jennifer wasn't there, he pleaded. And you know how important this celebration is to him. The request seemed odd. Jennifer had never asked me to impersonate her since our high school days, but the explanation made sense. She had been suffering from debilitating migraines lately, and our father's retirement was indeed a milestone event he'd been looking forward to for months. Besides, Marcus assured me that Jennifer had agreed to the plan, saying she would call me herself, but the medication had knocked her out. If only I had trusted my initial instinct that something felt off about this whole situation. But I didn't. Instead, I agreed to help, completely unaware that this decision would lead me to discover a truth so devastating that it would make me question everything I thought I knew about my twin sister's life. Little did I know, what awaited me at that retirement party would be just the beginning of a night that would force me to make decisions I never thought I'd have to make, especially concerning my own twin sister. The next evening, I found myself standing in front of my mirror, wearing one of Jennifer's dresses that Marcus had dropped off earlier. It was a deep burgundy number that she'd purchased for a charity event last month, one of those occasions she'd mysteriously backed out of at the last minute. As I applied her signature coral lipstick shade, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. My twin sister and I shared identical DNA, but lately, it felt like we were living in completely different universes. The country club where the retirement party was being held was about an hour outside the city. Marcus had insisted on picking me up, claiming Jennifer would never drive herself to such an event. During the drive, I noticed his knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel too tightly, and he kept checking his phone at every red light. When I asked if Jennifer was feeling any better, his response seemed rehearsed, almost mechanical. He mentioned something about her taking more medication and needing complete darkness and silence. The party was exactly what you'd expect from our father: elegant, but not ostentatious, with about 50 of his closest colleagues and friends gathered to celebrate his 35 years in corporate law. Our mother had outdone herself with the planning, and I could see the pride in her eyes as she watched Dad accept congratulations from his peers. What struck me as odd was that no one questioned my presence as Jennifer, not even our cousin Emma, 31F, who had always been able to tell us apart since we were kids. It wasn't until I excused myself to use the restroom that the first crack in Marcus's carefully constructed facade began to show. As I was walking down the hallway, I overheard him having an intense phone conversation in one of the empty conference rooms. His voice was barely above a whisper, but the words I caught made my blood run cold. She doesn't suspect anything. Yes, I know it's risky. What choice did I have? The money's almost gone. I stood there, frozen, as the implications of what I just heard began to sink in. The money he mentioned, could it be related to the substantial inheritance Jennifer had received from our grandmother last year? The one she'd been so excited to invest in their future? My sister had always been the more financially responsible one between us, meticulously planning for their future family. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text that would confirm my worst fears. It was from my best friend Melissa, 29F, who worked as a flight attendant. The message read, "Hey, weird question, but is Jennifer okay? I swear I just saw her boarding a flight to Vancouver with some guy who definitely wasn't Marcus. Tried to say hi, but she practically ran away when she saw me." My hands started trembling as I read the message again and again. Jennifer wasn't sick in bed, she was on a plane to Canada. And Marcus knew. He had orchestrated this entire charade, but why? What was happening to my sister's seemingly perfect life, and more importantly, why hadn't she trusted me enough to tell me the truth? As I stood there in that quiet hallway, surrounded by the muffled sounds of celebration, I realized I had unwittingly become an accomplice in whatever game Marcus was playing. But the real question that haunted me was whether my twin sister was a victim or a willing participant in this deception. My mind was racing as I returned to the party, trying to maintain Jennifer's poised demeanor while processing what I just discovered. The elegant room now felt suffocating, each congratulatory smile and casual conversation a reminder of how easily surface appearances could mask deeper truths. I watched Marcus working the room, skillfully navigating conversations with our family's oldest friends, and wondered how many other lies he told with that same convincing smile. Then I noticed something that made my stomach lurch. Marcus was having an intense discussion with our father near the bar, papers partially visible from his jacket pocket. I recognized the distinctive letterhead of our family's longtime investment firm, the same one that had handled our grandmother Eleanor's estate. The inheritance had been substantial, meant to secure both our futures. Jennifer had received slightly more, as she was named after our grandmother, and had spent countless hours caring for her during her final years. A memory suddenly surfaced: Jennifer crying on my shoulder 3 months ago, claiming she was just overwhelmed with work stress. Now I wondered if those tears had held a deeper meaning. She'd mentioned wanting to start a family, but Marcus had been oddly resistant to the idea lately, always citing financial timing. The pieces were starting to form a disturbing pattern. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email notification from our joint cloud storage, something we'd maintained since college. Jennifer had just uploaded a folder titled "Insurance Documentation." My hand shook as I opened it, finding dozens of screenshots of bank statements and investment accounts. All of them showed systematic withdrawals over the past 8 months, each one carefully timed to avoid immediate detection. The most recent statement showed her inheritance account nearly depleted. But it was the last document that made my blood run cold: a series of text messages between Jennifer and someone saved in her phone as AM. The conversation revealed a devastating truth. Marcus had been orchestrating a complex scheme involving not just Jennifer's inheritance, but also money from his real estate developments. He'd been manipulating property values, using Jennifer's architectural firm's reputation to legitimize his fraudulent dealings. The messages showed Jennifer had discovered this months ago, but instead of confronting him directly, she'd been quietly gathering evidence. She wasn't running away, she was protecting herself. The man Melissa had seen her with was likely Alan Morrison, her firm's legal counsel, known for handling sensitive corporate disputes. As this realization hit me, I noticed Marcus ending his conversation with our father, tucking the papers securely into his jacket. Dad looked pleased, even excited. What had Marcus convinced him to sign? The weight of my sister's silence suddenly made terrible sense. She hadn't just been protecting herself, she'd been trying to protect our entire family's reputation. My fingers hovered over my phone, tempted to call Jennifer immediately. But years of being twins had taught me something crucial about my sister: when she had a plan, acting too quickly could unravel everything. Yet, as I watched Marcus smoothly excuse himself to make another phone call, I knew I couldn't just stand by and let him potentially cause more damage to our family. I had roughly 30 minutes before Marcus would expect us to leave. 30 minutes to decide whether to maintain my sister's charade or confront the man who had not only betrayed her trust but potentially put our entire family's financial security at risk. The familiar weight of making decisions that could alter family dynamics forever settled on my shoulders, a burden that, as twins, Jennifer and I had always shared. But this time, I was standing alone. The crystalline sound of champagne glasses clinking felt like shards of ice against my nerves as I watched my father raise a toast to his retirement. His eyes gleamed with pride and trust, the same trust that Marcus was systematically betraying. Standing there in my sister's dress, wearing her life like an ill-fitting costume, I felt the weight of 3 generations of family legacy pressing down on my shoulders. My grandmother Eleanor had built our family's reputation from nothing, working tirelessly to establish herself in a male-dominated corporate world. The inheritance she left wasn't just money, it was a testament to her belief in her granddaughter's potential. Every summer evening she spent teaching Jennifer and me about investment portfolios and business ethics now felt like preparation for this exact moment. As I observed Marcus subtly guiding my father toward the study for what he claimed was just a quick signature on some investment paperwork, I remembered something crucial. 2 weeks ago, Jennifer had called me at an unusual hour, asking seemingly random questions about our grandmother's old lake house property. At the time, I'd been half asleep and barely registered the conversation. Now, every word rang with new significance. She'd been particularly interested in the property's original deed and whether I still had access to our grandmother's old files. The lake house had been our sanctuary during turbulent teenage years, a place where Jennifer and I could be ourselves without judgment. Our grandmother had left it to us jointly, with a specific clause that neither of us could sell without the other's explicit consent. A clause that, until this moment, had seemed like just another example of our grandmother's meticulous nature. My phone vibrated again, a calendar notification this time. Lake House Property Tax Assessment Final Notice. The piece I'd been missing clicked into place with devastating clarity. Jennifer hadn't just been gathering evidence of Marcus's financial manipulations. She'd been protecting our grandmother's legacy. The lake house was the last untouched asset, and Marcus had no idea it required both twin signatures for any transaction. As I watched Marcus emerge from the study with my father, both wearing expressions of satisfied conclusion, a new emotion surged through me, not just anger or betrayal, but a fierce protectiveness for everything my grandmother had built and entrusted to us. The papers Marcus had tucked away weren't just documents. They were pieces of our family's trust he thought he could dismantle without consequence. I caught my mother's eye across the room, and for a split second, her smile faltered. In 28 years of being twins, Jennifer and I had never managed to fully fool her. She could always sense when something was off, even if she couldn't quite identify what. As she started moving toward me with concern etching her features, I realized my time for passive observation was running out. The next few minutes would require me to make decisions that would ripple through our family for years to come. Marcus's phone lay unattended on the bar while he chatted with Dad's law partners. The retirement party would last another 2 hours, but I knew Jennifer's flight to Vancouver would be landing soon. Whatever plan my sister had set in motion, I was now an unwitting pivot point in its execution. My grandmother had always told us that true strength isn't in keeping secrets, but in knowing when to reveal them. As I stood there, watching Marcus weave his web of deception around my trusting family, I felt my grandmother's wisdom settle into my bones. The time for pretense was over. But the way forward would require more than just exposing the truth. It would demand a strategy as carefully crafted as the lies that had brought us to this point. My grandmother had always told us that moments of crisis reveal not just who we are, but who we've always been. As I stood in that crowded room, watching Marcus orchestrate his careful deceptions, I felt her wisdom settle into my bones with newfound clarity. The papers he'd convinced my father to sign weren't just documents, they were the physical manifestation of betrayed trust, each signature a wound inflicted on our family's foundation. I made my way to the ladies' room, my sister's borrowed heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. Once inside, I pulled out my phone and opened the folder Jennifer had shared. Between the bank statements and legal documents was a file I'd initially overlooked, a series of photos showing Marcus meeting with various people at upscale restaurants over the past few months. The final image showed him embracing a woman outside an airport terminal, her designer luggage suggesting this wasn't a casual encounter. The timestamp was from just 3 days ago. The pieces suddenly aligned with devastating precision. Marcus wasn't just decimating Jennifer's inheritance. He was systematically dismantling the life they'd built together while constructing a new one with someone else. The retirement party wasn't just about maintaining appearances, it was about securing my father's signature on documents that would give him control over additional family assets before he disappeared. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Gate 27B. Don't tell anyone. Trust Alan. It was the first direct communication I'd had from her all day, and its brevity spoke volumes about the precariousness of her position. Alan Morrison, her firm's legal counsel, wasn't just helping her escape, he was helping her build a case. As I stepped back into the party, I noticed Marcus had moved to a quiet corner, his expression darkening as he read something on his phone. The careful mask he'd worn all evening slipped for just a moment, revealing a flash of barely contained fury. His eyes darted around the room, landing on various exits as if calculating escape routes. My mother chose that moment to approach me, her hand gentle but firm on my arm, as she steered me toward a quiet alcove. The look in her eyes told me she'd finally pieced together what her maternal instinct had been trying to tell her all evening: the person wearing her daughter's dress wasn't the daughter she expected. Before she could speak, I squeezed her hand in our old childhood signal for, "Trust me, but don't say anything." The next few minutes unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of near misses. Marcus made 3 separate attempts to suggest we leave early, each time becoming slightly more insistent. I deflected with skills learned from years of twin swapping in high school, but I could see his patience wearing thin. The papers in his jacket pocket seemed to burn with malevolent potential. Then I noticed something that made my heart skip. He'd left his briefcase unattended near the coat check while getting another drink. The same briefcase I'd seen him meticulously guard all evening. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes protecting your family means being brave enough to shatter the peace. I had less than 5 minutes before he would return, and a lifetime of consequences hanging on what I chose to do next. The weight of my sister's trust, my family's legacy, and my grandmother's wisdom converged into a singular moment of clarity. As I moved toward the briefcase, I felt the last threads of our old life unraveling behind me, making way for whatever truth lay ahead. The contents of Marcus's briefcase confirmed every suspicion while introducing new horrors I hadn't anticipated. Beyond the documents detailing his systematic theft of Jennifer's inheritance lay evidence of a more intimate betrayal: closing papers on a beachfront property in the Cayman Islands, purchased jointly with a woman named Vanessa Reed. The same woman from the airport photos, I realized, as my fingers traced over their shared signatures on the deed. But it was another document that made my hands tremble: a draft petition for divorce, dated 3 months ago, carefully crafted to paint Jennifer as emotionally unstable and financially irresponsible. The cruel irony of his chosen narrative twisted in my chest like a knife. He planned to use my sister's absence tonight, an absence he had orchestrated as evidence of her supposed instability. The sound of Marcus's approaching footsteps sent me into swift, decisive action. Years of sharing secrets with Jennifer had taught me the art of quick thinking. I used my phone to capture images of the key documents, my grandmother's old lessons about maintaining evidence echoing in my mind. As I carefully returned everything to its exact position, a notification lit up my screen: a text from Alan Morrison. Documents received. Jennifer safe. Time to end the performance. My mother's quiet appearance at my elbow wasn't a surprise. She'd been watching me all evening with growing understanding. In that moment, looking into her eyes, I saw the same steel that had defined my grandmother's gaze whenever she confronted a challenge to her family's well-being. Without a word, she took the placeholder position I needed to create distance between myself and the briefcase before Marcus returned. The next few minutes unfolded with the peculiar clarity that comes with absolute certainty. I watched Marcus retrieve his briefcase, his fingers drumming against its leather surface with possessive anxiety. He'd spent the evening believing he was orchestrating a masterful deception, never realizing he was actually performing in someone else's carefully crafted play. My father was deep in conversation with his law partners when I approached, but something in my expression, perhaps an echo of my grandmother's determination, made him pause. The papers Marcus had convinced him to sign earlier lay folded in his jacket pocket, not yet officially filed. My words were quiet, but carried the weight of 3 generations of family wisdom. Dad, before you submit those documents tomorrow, there's something you need to know about your son-in-law's real estate ventures. Marcus's face, when he noticed me speaking with my father, transformed through a series of emotions: confusion, realization, fury, and finally, something approaching fear. He started moving toward us with purpose, but my mother's hand on his arm delayed him just long enough. The stage was set for the final act of this elaborate deception, but this time, the script would read very differently from what he had planned. The unraveling of Marcus's carefully constructed facade happened with the same methodical precision with which he'd built it. As my father reviewed the evidence on my phone, the unauthorized transfers, the secret property purchase, the calculated deceptions, decades of legal experience crystallized into cold, clear understanding. The slight tremor in his hands betrayed not just anger, but a deeper wound, the realization that his trust had been weaponized against his own daughter. Marcus attempted one final manipulation, his voice carrying across the now quieting room as he tried to paint Jennifer as the architect of their financial troubles. But his words faltered under the weight of truth already revealed. My mother, standing beside me with the quiet strength that had guided Jennifer and me through every childhood crisis, simply opened her phone to display the proof of his airport rendezvous with Vanessa. The carefully constructed story of Jennifer's instability crumbled in the face of documented reality. The next hour passed in a blur of calculated actions. My father's longtime friend and partner, a specialist in financial law, was quietly summoned from across the room. What had begun as a retirement celebration transformed into an impromptu war council, with Marcus's paper empire disintegrating document by document. The lake house property, the final piece he tried to secure through my father's signatures, remained safely beyond his reach, protected by my grandmother's foresight and the twin signature requirement she'd insisted upon. Later that night, as the last guest departed and Marcus was escorted from the premises by hotel security, my phone lit up with a message from Jennifer. "Home soon. You kept our promises." Attached was a photo of her with Alan Morrison and 2 federal agents, their expressions suggesting that Marcus's financial manipulations had attracted attention far beyond our family circle. The weeks that followed brought a cascade of revelations. Vanessa Reed, it turned out, was just one thread in a tapestry of deception that Marcus had woven throughout his marriage to my sister. The beachfront property was merely the latest in a series of investments made with other women's money, a pattern that Jennifer had discovered and methodically documented, while maintaining a facade of ignorance that allowed her to gather evidence. I sit here now, 3 months later, in our grandmother's lake house, watching Jennifer rake leaves in the garden. She's different, stronger perhaps, certainly wiser, but underneath it all, she's still my twin, still the other half of a shared history that Marcus never fully understood. We've spent weekends restoring the old property, each hammer stroke and paint layer feeling like reclamation of not just physical space, but of our family's narrative. The inheritance money is largely gone, consumed by Marcus's schemes, but the legacy our grandmother built survives in ways more precious than financial. Her lessons about vigilance, about the strength found in family bonds, about the wisdom of careful planning, these prove to be our true inheritance. The lake house stands as testament to her foresight, its dual signature requirement a final gift that protected us when we needed it most. My new phone number is known to only a handful of people now. Not out of fear, but as a boundary, a lesson learned about the value of privacy and the importance of choosing one's confidants wisely. Jennifer and I have emerged from this crucible with a deeper understanding of our grandmother's wisdom, that true wealth lies not in bank accounts or property deeds, but in the unshakable bond between those who share not just DNA, but an unwavering commitment to protecting each other's hearts. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings by the lake, I find myself reflecting on that retirement party, the night I wore my sister's dress and faced down the man who thought he could dismantle our family's legacy. What Marcus never understood was that he wasn't just dealing with one person's inheritance or one woman's trust. He was up against generations of feminine wisdom, strength, and resilience. In trying to divide us, he only proved how indivisible we truly were.